Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sitting with Sean, episode number 7. I am your host, Sean, and today I have a very, very special guest. He is my self-proclaimed mentor, Michael Mooridian. Uh, Welcome, Michael.
Well, thank you, Sean. I'm
Um,
really honored to be here. Thank you.
yeah, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I really do. So, Mike, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So, my name is Michael Mooridian. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and what that means for me is that since May 17th of 2002, I haven't found it a need to put a minor mood-altering substance into my body that wasn't prescribed by my doctor and strictly monitored by my wife. And um, what that means for me is that I've been able to be the person, the father, the husband, the brother, the uncle, the employee, the friend that I always wanted to be. And it's taken a long time to become that person, and I'm still becoming that person. But at least now I have that opportunity to do that and to be present in my life and for other people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You just hit your 20-year birthday, didn't you?
I did. Yep. Just last
That,
month, I certainly did.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and congratulations on that. That's a huge milestone.
Thank you very much. Yeah, some people think it was a midlife crisis that I bought myself a motorcycle, but it wasn't. It was to celebrate my 20 years.
Oh God, here we go. Everybody look out. Michael's on the road on a bike. Yeah. But right before we start, I just want to say you have been a massive, massive inspiration in my recovery. From the moment I met you, I was just like, holy crap, this is the man that I inspire to be like. Because, you've taught me so much and you've offered so much to the recovery community that I those are big shoes to fill, and I don't think anybody will fill them. And you set the standard for what the peership should be like, and you set the standard for how human beings should operate in recovery. And so I just want to say thank you for being an inspiration to me.
Wow, I'm just so humbled by that, and you're so very welcome. It's just what I did, the next right thing to stay sober and to do what I felt I could do for those that were coming behind me. And that's just, it's overwhelming to hear you say that. Thank you.
Thank you. So for everybody listening, everybody watching, I met Michael back in 2020, right before the pandemic started, if I'm not wrong.
Sounds about right.
And yeah, and so Michael was a peer trainer for the Alaska Therapeutic Court Alumni peer support groups. He was a peer trainer for them, and we were training he was training the first group of peers coming through to be certified in our organization. And I just so happened to be a part of that class, and I'd heard the name, never seen the face, and from that first interaction that I had with Michael all the way up till today, I've been completely blessed by having him as a part of my recovery. And he's taught me so much. I've learned so much. We've had conversations. There's been points in my recovery where I've been like, I'm done. I don't want to do this peer stuff anymore. I don't want to be a part of this group anymore. And he sat down and he said, okay, well, why do you feel that way? And he really reached out as a friend, and even more than a mentor, friend, and sat there and listened to me as I was just full of like all these emotions. And he said, I understand you, and I've been there too. And I was like, oh my goodness, okay, he understands where I'm coming from. And so that's another thing I'm eternally grateful for is not just being a mentor, but being a friend. And because I don't have a lot of those, and the friends that I do have, I hold them very close. So thank you for being a friend.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. I'm honored to be called your friend, and I consider you a friend as well. Absolutely. And you've given back to me as well. I've learned quite a bit from you, and I'm inspired by what you're doing. With all of the different things that you're doing, you're doing so much with the social media and the podcasts and the TikTok, and it's amazing the impact that your recovery is having on such a broad national scale. It's just it's amazing.
Yeah, I want to give away what I have, and you've been a part of that, so thank you for the support. All right, so we're gonna get right into it. Michael, tell us a little bit of like what it was like in your active addiction.
Sure. So, I was a tornado. I was a wreck, in especially towards the end. Anyone that got anywhere near me, I was a wreck in their life. So, just as a little bit of history, I was raised by a single parent. My mom um, had me when she was really young, and she was still trying to find out, her way in life and who she was and what she was doing, and trying to get her needs met. And so I wouldn't say that I was neglected, but I wasn't. My sister and I, we weren't really always first in her life, and then also she became an active alcoholic as well. And so, you know, I don't have a lot of like really crazy stories about trauma, but there was a lot of negative impact as a result of, her not being fully present in our lives, and her battles with addiction and trying to find a healthy relationship and things like that. And so, my sister and I, we had to clean together, and I had to pretty much raise my sister, and and so I had to grow up fast, and also I was given an example to follow that led me into using drugs and alcohol at a really young age. So I started, using marijuana at the age of 9. I started selling marijuana at school by the age of 10. I was a fully trained bartender by the time I was 14. Um, and my parents, I say my parents, uh, I have an adopted father. I'll get to that later, but so I grew up in restaurants and bars my whole life, and so excuse me. So that was kind of the atmosphere that I grew up in. Um, my mom was trying to find love and acceptance in all the wrong places, and she took us with her. And so that's where I learned to try and find love and acceptance, and try to find, in. We struggled a lot when we were kids. We moved around a lot. I was always the new kid in school, so I never really was able to maintain relationships. I too have very few friends, and that's probably why. Uh, you know, we for most of my life, I had Christmas in a new house every year, and so um, just when I would start making friends, we would move. And so, in the era in which I grew up, the easiest group to get involved in, regardless of whether you were the new guy or not, was the potheads and the people that were using substances. They'll accept pretty much anybody as long as you've got something to share. So
Hmm.
that was who I always cling to. Um, School was very easy for me, so I didn't struggle in school. I left school early. Um, I didn't really actually graduate. I took a high school equivalency test in my junior year, and I found out that the plans that I had for college were built on a lie. That's another whole long story I won't go into. But when I found out that it wasn't what I was being told wasn't true, I said, well, then I'm just going to go, have fun and get high. And so I bought a motorcycle and started dealing dope and growing marijuana, and the alcohol was right there along with it all the time. And then also, so all the way through my adolescence, I pretty much did everything. Really got into psychedelics quite a bit, um, acid, mescaline, mushrooms, those types of things. I never got into opiates or heroin. It was just something that, first of all, when I was growing up, it was what everybody used to scare everybody. It's like, oh my God, you're going to get hooked on heroin. You're going to start using needles, and you're.
Yeah.
That was like the worst thing you could do when I was growing up. So I stayed away from that. But everything else, and then I found cocaine and meth, and I think that, during my generation, there wasn't a lot of emphasis on diagnosing people with mental health issues, especially kids. You were maybe hyperactive, or you were this or you were that, but there weren't any really diagnosis. And then there was people trying to control kids with Ritalin and stuff like that. Luckily I avoided that, but I think I did have an undiagnosed, uh, still do, ADHD. And so they treat that with stimulants. So when I did meth, I felt like I thought everybody else felt. So I
Yeah.
felt normal, and I could focus, my thoughts focused. I could concentrate on things, while everybody else was, doing crazy things and peeking out the windows and, tearing toasters apart and things like that. I was calm and mellow, and I did things that wouldn't wouldn't lead someone to believe that I was tweaking, right?
Yeah.
I took care of business, and I was able to. One of the things that allowed me to do too was that it allowed me to stay a functional alcoholic, so I could drink more when I was using meth. And one of the things that was instilled in me at a young age was a strong work ethic. I started my first official job at the age of 12, and I've been working pretty much every day of my life since then. And so I could drink and party all night and get up in the morning and do some meth and go to work. And so it allowed me to stay a functional alcoholic for a long time until the end. Um, so I I also, of course, when I drank, I was a blackout drunk. So I would do things that I didn't know that I had done. I would do and say things that I felt a lot of guilt and shame for afterwards. It ruined a lot of my relationships. There's still only a few people, I could count them all on one hand, who have stuck with me all the way through my using and into my recovery, and are still my friends today, from my childhood. Um, but I put them through a lot, and I hurt my family a lot. The first time that I decided that I had a problem and I wanted to get help, um, I was sitting in an empty apartment in a broken lounge chair, trying to get a broken TV to work, with a 12 pack sitting next to me in an apartment I hadn't paid rent on in probably 9 months. And I had just lost another job. And so um, I decided that I needed help, and I called the treatment center. This was in California. I'm originally from California, San Francisco Bay Area. And it was a 30-day residential program. I went in, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about my addiction. I learned a lot that no one had ever told me before. Um, and I actually stayed sober for 2.5 years. And then it was, um, oh, I'd have a beer here, I'd have a beer there. Then I had 2 beers, then I had 3 beers. And then, then the next thing I know, I wake up and there's an empty fifth next to me, and I'm off and running again. And it was be 10 years before I got back into the rooms. One of the things that first recovery did for me was it introduced me to the 12-step programs. Um, I'll never remember, the first meeting I went to was huge. It was a sober anniversary meeting, and there was 300 people in attendance.
Wow.
And yeah, I walked in and I was like, really not expecting that at all. And I met some sober people, and I learned about people that were using the program. And the gentleman that was getting his coin that night, he was getting a 30-year coin. And I remember that he got it to the podium, and they said, how did you do it? And he said, well, people told me if I went to meetings and I didn't drink between meetings, that I could stay sober. And it's worked for 30 years. I'll try it again tomorrow. And that was the extent of his how he did it. And so I learned that one of the myths that I had believed was that everybody used drugs and alcohol, and it was just part of life, and there was something wrong with me because I couldn't manage my use. And I learned that I had um, an abnormal response to alcohol. I
Hmm.
have a genetic predisposition, all of those things. But I also learned that I didn't have to live with the guilt and shame that I was living with and the pain that I was causing other people, and that I wasn't just destined for that wasn't my lot in life. Um, and so it gave me a lot of hope, and I started doing good things, and I started meeting good people, and I went back to school and started secondary education, um, and then, like I said, it just that slippery slope. I stopped going to meetings. I started just looking for that perfect relationship again. I started looking for fun in all the wrong places, and I also missed the people that I had been using with, and so I started like, checking in on them and seeing what they were doing. Of course, they were still doing the same old things, so I just ended up falling back into it.
Yeah.
And so again, it was 10 more years and 10 more years of devastation. And one of the things that I learned is that, for me anyway, after a period of sobriety, when I go back into it, I go farther down and it gets worse than it was before. And it
Oh
happens
yeah.
and it happens quicker. So I ended up instead of just using meth, I ended up started manufacturing and dealing in meth, and that got me into a whole realm of of reality that I probably am still suffering from to this day from that. The things that I saw, the things that I did, and it was just really, really, really ugly and really painful for me and anybody who cared about me. Um, and then I started getting DUIs. Well, actually, I got my first DUI when I was 18 on a motorcycle. And I ended up getting charged with DUI 6 times, convicted 4 times. I was charged with possession of marijuana and methamphetamine for sale. Um, there was always this for me, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but I'm going to talk about God a lot. For me, it was God. I believe that He had a plan for me, and in order for me to fulfill that plan, He kind of, I think, protected me in a lot of ways. Um, I've dodged the felony bullet like 5 times. There's so many times I should have gotten a felony conviction, and by the skin of my teeth, I would get out of it. I had a DUI with injuries, an accident with injuries that I was able to get out of. My fourth DUI was excuse me. Yeah, my fourth conviction for DUI was here in Alaska. Luckily, it was shortly after. Not, well, I don't believe in luck. I still believe that it was God. That I knew if they found out about my convictions in California, I would get a felony. So as soon as I went to court, I pled guilty, and they treated it as my first conviction. And then I fell back into it here in Alaska. I'm an outdoorsy person. I love camping and fishing and all that kind of good stuff, and I love being in the woods. And so, just kind of a backtrack. When I was 14, I read a book about Alaska, and from that time forward, I always wanted to move to Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
So fortune created a situation for me to move to Alaska, and so I did. And I didn't necessarily move here to get away from my addiction, but I thought it might help.
Yeah.
It was kind of I did do a couple of what people call geographics in my past to try and run away from my addiction, and it never worked. Wherever I go, I take my addiction with me, and so I might be able to stay clean for a short period of time, but then I went right back into it, and I went down harder and faster than I did before, and created devastation wherever I went.
Yeah. I like to hit on a few things that you were talking about real quick.
Sure.
The guilt and the shame. That to me was one of the more catastrophic things, because we have this vicious cycle of mental health crisis that leads into addiction, and then it's just a vicious cycle. But the guilt and the shame, and what I feel is another one of those vicious cycles. You got guilt and shame, or you do something, you got guilt and shame, and then you hit the addiction, and then you just keep in this vicious cycle. You promise I'll never do it again, and I've said that so many times. I promise I'll never do it again. I'll never drink again. This will be the last time, and then that's that guilty, vicious cycle that I talked about. And And I don't know if that's what it was like for you, but for me, the guilt and the shame was huge.
Yeah, it was, and I was caught in that cycle, especially because I was a blackout drinker. The
Yeah.
meth kind of helped out a little bit, but it didn't always save me from that. And so, yeah, I would do and say things to people that I cared about, and that one of the reasons why I got into recovery to begin with was not so much the state that my life was in; it was how much pain I had caused others. Um, it was I couldn't live with what I was doing to other people. The emotional strain was way too much. I couldn't look people in the eye. I couldn't talk to them. I started hiding from them, my family, everybody. And so when I would fall off or when I would do it again, I would, like, of course, that cycle, I would go and get high again to get away from the feelings I didn't want to feel. That's what we do. The only reason that we use drugs and alcohol is to change the way we feel. And so when I was feeling stuff that I didn't want to feel, I would run away by getting high. And it's a vicious circle. It really is a vicious circle. Yeah.
Guilt, and that's one of the things, and one of the things that I did that really, to this day, I'm working on forgiving myself for, is the guilt and the shame led me to run away from my biological daughter. And she already lives in the lower 48. And so she was born in a period of time where I had a little bit of sobriety, but I wasn't working a program. I was white knuckling it. And then I relapsed, and then I got sober again, and then I relapsed, and then I got sober again. And she doesn't really remember those. And I don't want her, I didn't want her to know this addicted version of Sean that would go to any lengths to use his substance of choice and do nasty and ugly things to the people around him. And so I ran away from that responsibility as a father. And I made amends with my daughter's mom, and I explained it to her. I said, hey, look, I stayed away for so long because she didn't deserve to see that version of me. And she said, whatever version it is of you, she needs you. And my biggest fear at that point was that I was going to do something to her, say something to her that was going to hurt her, that was going to be irredeemable. And I've always carried this thing in my life, like, if I've done something wrong, it's irredeemable, and I'm not, there's no way I can come back from it. And I know now that that's wrong, and that's just a bad way of thinking. But that's, to me, that's where guilt and shame led me, was running away from my kid. And it's a hard thing to deal with. And now, so I try not to make up for the past. I try to live in the present to prepare for the future, and so that relationship is much better. It's
Yeah, I have a similar. So in that first treatment that I went to, I ended up getting into a treatment relationship, and that resulted in my beautiful son. And without going too much into detail, um, I abandoned him, and I felt that he was much better off where he was. I found out later that wasn't necessarily true, um, because I convinced myself that was going to be too hurtful and damaging to him, that he deserved to have a sober father. He deserved to have someone who'd be present in his life. And I was not in any way, shape, or form able to do that. Um, I mean, I couldn't keep a dog, you know,
yeah,
uh,
yeah,
much less raise a person. And so, but as I look back on it, it was something that was a cop out on my part. It was something that I used as a way to avoid my responsibility and to him. And probably if I had applied myself with the true care and concern that I have for him now, he probably would have helped me to get into recovery and maintain recovery sooner.
yeah.
But unfortunately, that didn't happen. But one of the beautiful things that the Lord did do for me was allowed me to reconnect with him when he turned 18. And rebuild that relationship. And now, like you said, I'm not trying to make up for the past because I can't do that. But what I can do is create the best present for him and I now. And right now, we're enjoying a fantastic relationship. And he moved to Alaska, and we're able to have the relationship that I, would dream about when I would be crying in my beer, or woe was me, and I wish I could be this great father, and all that kind of stuff that we do. And so one of the things that the Lord and sobriety has done for me is it's brought us back together and created a really great relationship, and I'm so very, very thankful for that. It was one of the best gifts of my recovery, and one that I didn't think I was going to have. That was another one of those just glorious gifts that that the Lord gave me, that I thought that I had missed that boat. I thought that he would not want to have anything to do with me, that I burnt that bridge. And so I'm just so very, very grateful and so very thankful that I had the relationship with him that I have today.
Absolutely. Another question is, what when you first got into the 12 step, into the rooms, what was your initial thought about the 12 step programs?
Uh, I thought it was a great plan for cleaning up the mess of my past, creating a better present and a better future. And it gave me a code to live by that was better than the one I was living before. So I was living the criminal code. I was living the addict code, which pretty much is no code. Um,
Mhm.
but any code that I thought I was living by before was just a self-serving, self-centered code. And so um, the 12 steps for me was a way for me to recognize I don't I started a relationship with God when I was very young, but of course I didn't maintain it very well. But it allowed me an opportunity to re-engage in that relationship with the Lord, and then maintain a way out of the guilt and shame that I had, um, and to stop creating more wreckage that I would need to make up for, and just a way to live a healthier life. And today, I still do one of the all those gracious things you said about me. Those are all the things that I do as a part of a living amends to try to heal the wound that I created in this reality by um, my previous lifestyle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what led you into recovery? Because I know that your story of recovery, uh, where your journey in recovery, that is amazing. But what led you into recovery?
Well, it was a start and stop kind of thing. So I had come to my own realization, like I said, in that apartment, sitting in that lounge chair with that broken TV, that I had a problem. And once I realized that, and then I got a little bit of help, I realized that there would be a possibility for me to manage my problem. Um, and I tried several times. The first time I went to treatment was because I had that moment of clarity and I initiated that myself. Um, and then during the 10 years before I really got back into what I would call an honest recovery, I went to treatment um, 3 times, but it was just to satisfy the law.
Mhm.
Every time I went into treatment, I used throughout the whole treatment. And then when I got to Alaska, that DUI that I got in Alaska, I had to go to treatment because of ASAP and all that fun stuff. And so I had gotten a brand new counselor. I was in treatment, and I had convinced her that there was no reason for me to take UAs. So for almost my entire program, I was able to use throughout the entire program. And then I was
Mhm.
about a month from graduation, and I met with her, and she said, we reviewed your case and we realized that you haven't been taking UAs for this whole time, and so we're going to start UAing you." And I said, well, you're going to find out that I'm dirty for this and this and this and this. And so I really didn't give into a recovery lifestyle even after those other 3 treatments. So I'm 4 treatments in. I've only managed to keep 2.5 years of sobriety after that first treatment, and then um, the access to meth here in Alaska, at least my access to meth, dried up. it just dried up. And so in order for me to continue with the lifestyle that I was doing, I got into crack. And crack is concentrated evil, man. That stuff is just like, it took me down harder and faster than anything. I mean, I did meth for 30 years, but well, not quite 30 years, 20 years. But within 6 months, I had lost everything. I had burnt every bridge. And I ended up picking up a charge for theft in the second, another felony charge. And so this time I fought hard because I had learned about, and I can't even tell you where I learned about it, to be honest with you, but I learned about the therapeutic courts. And at the time, it was just a way for me to get out of trouble. And I knew that I was going to have to do treatment when I got the charge. So I went ahead and went into treatment, and I actually completed it sober. I completed an intensive outpatient treatment program, and I stayed sober. And, I don't advocate for people doing recovery this way because I did it the wrong way. So I got the charge. The level of guilt and shame at that point was so overwhelming, especially for the people that I was working for that had gone just above and beyond for me, that I quit using on a Monday. The next day, I met my wife, and in 6 weeks we were married. And that's not how I suggest people start off recovery.
Yeah.
I'm one of those that propose that, you don't jump into any new relationships for at least a year or two before you're solid in your recovery. But that's the way that I did it. And she was already 6 years clean when I met her, and in the program. And so I went through treatment, and then I fought for 8 months to get into wellness court, and I finally got in. And when I got in, I thought, I'm going to bring in my certificate for my treatment. They're going to call it good. They're going to let me go. And that's not how it turned out. So, but again, I really wanted to avoid a felony, and the Lord put another opportunity for me to avoid a felony conviction on my record. So I did drug court. And when I did drug court, I learned so much more than I learned in any of those other treatments. It was a different type of program. It's what's called a therapeutic community. And the way that they dealt with addiction was exactly what I needed. And I really needed sort of a more confrontive kind of in my face kind of, this is what your addictive life is like, and this is what you're like, and this is what your life's going to continue to be like unless you change, and this is what it's going to take for you to change, and are you willing to do it? And so I put the work in, and I worked really hard. And also without my wife, I don't know that I would have been able to do it. That was the sober piece that I needed at home. I needed to go home to somebody sober every day. Living on my own, I probably never would have done it. Excuse me. So 13 months of drug court. I did it without a hitch. I missed one UA and had to do 8 hours of community service, but otherwise I did it without a hitch. And I was really, really proud of the person that I was becoming. I really started to feel good about myself and the possibility of me having a good life with this woman that I fell in love with. And so after that, at the end of my treatment, the counselors pulled me aside and they asked me if I ever thought about being a counselor. And I said, no, I've always wanted to be in the helping field, but I always thought it was going to be in like the medical field. So that was that whole thing about why I didn't go to college. And there was supposedly a trust fund for me to go to college. And apparently the trust fund was a big lie. It was just told to me so that I would get good grades. And I had been preparing to become a surgeon. I was going to be a surgeon. I was taking college courses for anatomy and physiology in high school, and was I had a 4.0 average. I was ready to go. And then I found out it was all a lie. So, but what I did do was, in California, they have what's called a psych tech certificate, which is you can go, and we call them, I think, BHTs here or BHAs here, but it's for mental health. And so I went to school and I got a psych tech certification, which allowed me to work with developmentally disabled adults, which was a fantastic field to work with. And so I started doing a little bit of work in that, and I knew that I wanted to be in the helping field, but that was during my first treatment. So we fast forward again to where I am in 2003 when I graduated wellness court. They pulled me aside, asked me if I ever thought about being a counselor. So I checked into it, and I this is something else. It's a shameless plug that I'm going to put in for the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. DVR is a fantastic program. It's a pain in the ass because it's lengthy and you have to jump through a lot of hoops. But they paid for everything for me to get my first level of certification to be a counselor tech certification here in Alaska. And I got a job as a counselor.
That's
And
awesome.
and once I started moving in that direction, because all through wellness court, I was still working in restaurants, managing restaurants. I can do anything there is to do in a restaurant with my eyes closed. It's just second nature.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get away from it because it's a lifestyle that is constantly flooded with drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
You can drop me in any town anywhere in the USA, and I can go get a job in a restaurant and be high with anything that I want, probably within a day. Right? So,
Yeah.
so I didn't think I was going to be successful staying in that field. So I started doing, and I fell in love with it, and I felt like I had found my calling, and mentors just started coming out of the woodwork. People that helped me along and helped me in my career and helped me in my, they became more than just mentors. They became friends and helped me with my recovery and with life in general. And I started getting really heavy back into my relationship with the Lord in my recovery this time around. And everything just seemed to click in place. And then 6 years after I graduated, I got a call from Claire, I think it was, from Partners for Progress, and they were interested in starting an alumni for the Wellness Court. And they asked me if I was interested, and it was kind of interesting. Without going too much into it, there was a period of time there, 4 years after my marriage, where I was separated from my wife for a little while, and I was in that place. And the Lord, I think, knew that I needed something because I started to not go to my meetings. I started to isolate more. And so I went to a meeting with a bunch of people that they had called to see if they wanted to start it. And I liked what was there. It was a great support. I got to connect with people that had been through a similar experience with me. I found a kinship with them. You can, AA is great, NA is great, and I have nothing bad to say about those programs. But it's difficult to have conversations about what you went through in wellness court with people with AA because they don't know what it was like. They don't know what MRT is. They don't know.
Yeah.
And so, but these people did, and I found a kinship with them. And I told them, okay, well, we'll meet once a month. I'll give you 6 months. If I'm still interested in it after 6 months, we'll go from there. Right. So I committed to meeting for 6 months. And for anybody that knows about AKTCA, the rest is history. So we've been at it for 16 years now. We've been at it we're on our own 501c3. We've done amazing things for people in wellness court and for people across the state in terms of legislation. And it's not a shameless plug for AKTCA, but that's where I was with my career. I was able to give back, but really I fell in love with peer work, and it was something that I wasn't getting paid to do. It was more personal. It was more personally satisfying and fulfilling because I wasn't getting paid for it. And so that's kind of my path, man. And in terms of how I got back into recovery and what brought me to where I am today.
I've heard a lot of people, and doing what I do and being a facilitator saying, I've gone through programs before, and while I was in the program, I was still using it and I got away with it. And my question to them, and that time when I hear that, and it's not an accusatory question, but it's more of a question, what makes now any different? versus the last time, or the last 2 or 3 times, like what makes that time different from this one? And all of them have the resounding same answer. I realize that I can't live that life anymore. And if I go back to the way that it used to be, then it's jail or death. And I don't want to go there. And so for me, that's something beautiful. And yeah, a lot of people that might hear this or see this say, "Oh, how can you do that when you're in recovery?" And I always, and I tell people that say that maybe we're not ready for that. Maybe we're not completely sold to the program at that point. Maybe, we're not that phase in our life we're not ready for. We haven't hit rock bottom. And I know rock bottom looks different for everyone. Your rock bottom looks different than mine does. And so yeah, that's something common. And when you said that, I was like, oh, I've heard that before. But also, there's a few things that I attribute and think, individual programs or people for my recovery. Not saying that they did it, but my wife was definitely one of those. Like I did it. I'm sober for myself, but my wife definitely was a motivator for me to stay sober. Not the fact that she said she would leave me if I relapsed, because her and I had already talked about that, and that's established. That's not going to happen. But the fact is, I don't want to let her down. She's already seen that terrible side of me. She's already seen the worst version that I could offer. Now it's time for her to see the best version of me and the best human being that I can be. And so she's definitely one of the reasons I stay sober today.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I was just going to touch on a couple of things that you said. And, for me, those 3 treatments that I went through that I used, it was because I was just jumping. I wasn't looking for sobriety. I was jumping through hoops for the courts. And, the motivation for that last time that I went through treatment, my motivation was completely different. I am so very thankful that I waited until I got sober to get married. So I've had lots of relationships that unfortunately crashed and burned, were dumpster fires. But, one of the things that I'm really, really grateful for is that my wife has never seen that side of me. And she's my first marriage. I was never married before. And I'm really glad that even though with that period of separation, we were able to get back together, and I still had some growing that I had to do. Like I said, I started that relationship wrong. I started it too soon in my recovery, but it happened the way it had to happen for me, I guess. It's just my story, my path. But it wasn't until I really wanted something better, because I knew that if, even all the way back to that first treatment, I knew that if I wasn't able to stay sober, that, like you said, death or jail, or, worse. There was times where I prayed for death. There's worse things than death. But when I got into, even though I went into the wellness court with this sort of, I just want to get out of trouble kind of thing, and I can stay sober on my own, and I know how to do it. And, I went into it with the idea that I was going to be sober regardless. But what really helped me out was that I was open to it at that time. When I got the information and that I got in there, I was open to it. I wanted to apply it. I put the work in. I bought what they were selling, right?
Yeah.
And the times in between, I wasn't ready. I was so deep in my addiction and my lifestyle, and I had resolved the fact that I was probably going to die on a bar stool or in a drug deal in an alley somewhere, that I didn't have any hope at that point. But when I met my wife and I gotten into wellness court, I had hope. Yeah. And so that's just my path. Other people, whatever reason they use while they're in treatment is their reasons, and hopefully they come back in time when the soil is fertile, right, and the right seeds are planted, and they reap that benefit. But yeah. I wanted it. I really wanted it.
So now in treatment court, what was the most beneficial part of your program? Like it could be a class, it could be going to a group, going to court. What was the most beneficial part of that portion of your recovery?
Yeah. So for me, so one of the things that they did in the treatment that I went through is they did what was called an encounter circle.
Mhm.
And everybody eventually got into the encounter circle. And what it was y'all sat in a circle, and everybody that you were in treatment with had an opportunity to tell you all about yourself. Right. And and what I found out was that what I was projecting, what I wanted to project, I wasn't projecting. And that's a better way to put it. The person that I wanted people to see who I wasn't what I was projecting, and that wasn't who they were receiving. And it was a really big wake up call for me. I found out later that there's this whole thing is called the Johari's window. It's a thing that this really smart person came up with that kind of divides people into four windows, right? And
Mhm.
so there's a part of us that we know that nobody else knows. There's a part of us that other people know and we know. And there's a part of us that other people know but we don't know unless they clue us in on it. And I was really clueless in that part. And then there's a window where there's stuff about me that you don't know and I don't know. But when all that was reflected back to me, it hit me like a ton of bricks that people weren't perceiving me the way that I wanted them to perceive me. And I needed that information to become the person that I wanted to become and to have the relationships that I wanted to have.
Mhm.
Because I thought I was, a helpful, caring, all these wonderful things. And it turned out I was just someone who came across as a know-it-all, um, you know, came across as someone who felt that other people thought that I felt I was superior to other people. Um, and I didn't, and I don't, but that's the way I was coming across to people. And so I had to learn that about myself so that I could project to people the person I wanted them to see, the
Yeah.
real me, right? And so that helped, but also learning about my disease helped, learning about my ADHD helped, learning tools to cope with that. One of the other things that really helped, which might sound really bizarre, is that I had a supportive relationship with the court and the judge. So every other time I'd ever gotten in trouble, which was a lot, um, every interaction had been punitive. And
Mhm.
with the wellness court, I had to go to court and get in front of the judge every week in the beginning. And every time I went, I was waiting for them to, like, say horrible things, or make me do things, or bring the hammer down, kind of thing. And and the judge that I had, Judge Joanides, was amazing. And she would ask me things instead of saying what they talked about in the pre-meet. She would start off with, "So how's your wife? How's your kids doing? How's the job going?" And she expressed a real care and concern for me that just honestly just shocked me. I didn't think, and at first, of course, I didn't trust it. And then, we would do things like have softball games, and she would show up and she would have hot dogs with us, and she would sit in the stand and she would cheer for us, and just stuff like that. And I don't know why that had such an impact on me, but it did. Um, and so, uh, I really don't know why, but it had a big impact on me. So that, and learning about my disease, and learning about myself, um, and really learning about the fact that I could change the way that I did things and the way that I thought about myself, and I could change the self-talk that was in my head, uh, and get rid of that really critical voice that always told me that I wasn't good enough, that I would never amount to anything, that no matter what I did, it would always fail. All those lies that I got when I was growing up from whoever. I didn't get those necessarily from my mom, but I think some of the messages I got from her was that I didn't matter, right? And so, and I started to have a relationship that I could trust with my wife. So I would bring all this stuff home, and I would share it with her, and she would was so receptive, and she really accepted me for who I was. And um, so all of that kind of culminated together to make a successful program for me. The first one was just instructional, and I got introduced to AA, and that was a really good program. And I used AA for a long time during Wellness Court and even after Wellness Court. And I still go to meetings occasionally, but my recovery program has changed over the years. And so I'm not as much involved in that. But yeah, so in terms of your question, that's really what helped me in my Wellness Court program.
That's awesome. Yeah, I noticed, and for people that are listening that don't know what a drug court is or wellness court, it's a therapeutic court that's modeled off of a therapeutic program that really encompasses the participant. And it's more of an encouraging program versus a punitive program. And I went through it. Obviously, Michael just went through it, but we went through different therapeutic courts. And it really looks at the individual and makes them get into treatment holistically. So you're looking at counseling, you're looking at 12-step programs, whether it be NAAA, you've got relapse prevention classes, MRT, and group therapies, and depending on like the charges and stuff like that, you go to marriage counseling and stuff like that. And so that's what it looked like for me. And my most beneficial, and I've said this in one of my other shows, was MRT. MRT, I feel, I can't say that I would take any program or any part of my program out and say that I would be successful or that I would fail. But I know the one that really stuck out to me the most was MRT. And I'd like to say that MRT single-handedly saved my life, because had I not taken MRT, I don't know where I would be today. And so much so that I went and I searched out how to get certified as a facilitator for MRT, and it was really beneficial, and it was super awesome. Now let's talk about the peership. What led you into peership?
So that really was the phone call that I got to see if I would be interested in starting an alumni for the Wellness Court. And okay. So we started with that, and it was really grassroots. I mean, at the beginning, it was just we were getting together for support. It was kind of like another support meeting. But then, I really have to give a plug for Claire Wadup and Bonnie Levon, who were our inspirations from Partners for Progress, which is a nonprofit organization that worked with the wellness courts that helped people with housing and supportive services that would help people complete the program. And they grew into a reentry program that helps people after leaving incarceration, and whether they're involved with the wellness courts or not. And they do amazing work. But those two ladies really had a true belief that this group of people that was getting together could really do really great things if they wanted to. And so they said, you guys are but you guys are getting together and you're supporting. Do you have any ideas of what you would like to do with this time? Or do you just want to stay a support group? And the people that were involved in the Wellness Court alumni early on were just amazing people, and they had really great ideas. And they said, so let's formalize. We aren't attached to the court. The court doesn't decide what we do and what we don't do, so we can be whatever we want. Partners Progress said, here's $1,000. You can be whatever you want. Basically the $1,000 was for pizza and bottled water for our meetings for a year. Back then it would stretch that far. But and they gave us a place to meet, and they gave us probably the most important thing, and that was clerical support. So they would maintain the phone trees and the email lists, and they would send out the reminders and all that kind of stuff. And then the other piece was just, they were so encouraging. We would come up with ideas, and they're like, yeah, do it. Yeah, do it. You can do it. Yeah, do it. And here's maybe how you could do it. And they would give us their expertise. They had been working with nonprofits and in different areas, which I think really prepared them to be of great support for us. And so we decided as a group that we wanted to create a relationship with the Wellness Court that would bring more alumni in and also support current participants. So we formed a little board and we created an agreement with the court, which they accepted and they signed on to. It's kind of like a contract that this is what alumni would like to do for your court, and this is what we won't do. And so we kind of and that lasted, well, I think we just revised it just a few years ago, but that led the opportunity for us to start going to graduations or going to court. Because again, for those of you that don't know, wellness court, part of the requirements is you, as a participant, you have to go to court every week and go before the judge and see what your progress is. And so we would just show up, and the court would recognize us and say, hey, these are people that have gone through the program. If you need support, they're willing to be mentors and those types of things, and just be an additional support. And that's how we started. And I started supporting people that were in the courts, and I fell in love with it. And all I did was, share my experience, strength, and hope, and how I got through wellness court. And wellness court is a stressful, time-consuming, life-invasive process, and it's just really hard for people to get through and have that level of intrusion in your life. And so I just started talking to people, and then that led other people to come into the alumni. And then we found out that there was what's called the peer movement, and we got involved in the peer movement. And so we started seeking funds. We got funds we applied for a grant from the Alaska Mental Health Trust, and we got this really great grant. And so they helped us create a website, and it just started taking off from there. And people would just bring ideas like, let's go involve ourselves in the wellness walk, let's create a team for that, let's put on a picnic, let's do a sober holiday celebration for the participants, and let's get donations and buy toys. And I dressed up as Santa and I gave out toys at the and so and I loved that, and I did that for years, and it just really filled my cup. And the more I got into it, and then the more I found out how much I enjoyed it, and how much it just grew and grew. And it became a really significant part of my recovery. And then at one point, I actually got hired by a company to start an alumni for them. And with them, I found out that you could get certified as a peer recovery coach. And so they paid to have some people come up. I invited everybody from the Wellness Court alumni to come and get trained. And we trained up a whole bunch of people. And then that really started my involvement with, I guess, formal peer work, where I got into training, and we got into, even before that, there was, we really have to give credit to the mental health community for really leading the way in peer support work. They're the ones that really started it. And we got involved with an organization that had started the peer work. And I'm embarrassed that I can't remember, but they started to create a coalition of all of the peer organizations in the state, actually long before we started the peer recovery coaching. And we got together with organizations like NAMI, which is National Association of Mental Health something or other. And again, I'm horrible with names and even worse with acronyms, it seems. But that's how I got into peer work. And again, I just fell in love with it. And together with my career as a counselor, I felt that they went together really well, and I could be a real good support in terms of trainings and those types of things. That I fell in love with just sharing my experience, strength, and hope, and my knowledge with other people to help them be the best peers that they could be. And so, for those that don't know, with AKTCA, the state of Alaska kind of discovered that in the lower 48 there was a lot of peer organizations and what they call peer recovery centers. They are centers run entirely by peers. They're called RCOs, recovery something organizations. I can't remember now. Recovery community organizations. I don't know. I'm probably not saying that right. But anyway, so the peer movement became really huge as a component of treatment. And treatment centers started employing peers, and they started incorporating peer support into their services. And so Alaska decided that they wanted to have their own state certification and requirements for state certification. So they put out a request for peer organizations to submit training manuals and training programs so that people could get these state certifications. And so AKTCA, a group of us from AKTCA, we got together, we created a 40-hour training and a manual, and we submitted it to the state, and they accepted it. And so now we're authorized, approved to provide the required 40-hour trainings that people need to apply for state certification, for peer support professional certifications. And we've been doing that now for the last 3 years. Well, kind of slowed down when COVID hit, but yeah, we started doing it just before COVID hit, and we're continuing to do it now. As Sean said, he was a part of that. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell my peer path in my recovery.
I just want to take a moment and how amazing of a human being is Bonnie Laban. She's an angel in disguise. I swear she's an angel in disguise. She's an amazing human being.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever met Claire, but they're just like two peas in a pod. They're just amazing people. Yeah,
I have not.
Oh well, yeah. Her and Bonnie were like, Batman and Robin. They were just like the dynamic duo, and yeah. And if it wasn't for them, AKTCA wouldn't be what it is, and my recovery wouldn't be what it is, and my involvement in peer work wouldn't be what it is. Yeah, just truly amazing people.
Bonnie, every interaction I've had with Bonnie, and even just calling on the phone and just checking up on her. She's just an amazing human being with this just massive heart for people in recovery and people in general. And she works so hard, and she's just an amazing human being.
She is. Yeah. There's just no getting around it. She is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it's crazy. I learned so much, not just about myself, but about other people in recovery through AKTCA. And something that you say to me, and that Carlos Diaz says to me, is that the opposite of addiction is connection. And these connections that we're making in AKTCA, not just from alumni and facilitators to participants in the program, but outside in the community, is just insane. It's hard to go somewhere right now in the recovery community and people not know who AKTCA is.
Yeah, they've got a really big footprint. They really do.
Yeah. And you know what? You're partially responsible for that.
I suppose I am.
You are.
But, one of the things too, one of the reasons why I stayed involved with the AKTCA was that there is amazing people. And one of the reasons why I got into being a counselor and got into recovery as not just a vocation, but as a way of life, and the peer work that I did, is because, time and time again, I meet these amazing people. And, addicts and alcoholics, when we're sober, man, they're just the best people on the planet. They're the best friends. They're the best parents. They're the best employees. They're just the best people on the planet as long as we're sober. Of course, you give us a drop of our drug of choice and we're the exact opposite. But
absolutely,
what really kept me in was the people that I kept running into and connecting with and finding, people like Carlos and Ron and Lance and Kat and just so many people, and I'm leaving a whole bunch of people out, and I couldn't name them all, but they're the reasons why I stayed in it. They're the reasons why we put all those volunteer hours in, and they're the reason, just because of their passion and what they brought to the table, and just their amazing talents and their amazing care for other people. I think that people that maybe grow up with abuse and neglect when they find people that truly care about them, they just will do anything for them. And I think that's part of what brings the recovery community together, is that we finally have, first of all, believed that we were lovable, and then we found people that would love us. And we just don't ever want to give that up. We just don't ever want to give that up. And so I will, I'm now involved in this. This is not, I say this because of where recovery has taken me, not because of what I have done. But now and you are too, involved in a national treatment court alumni association, which is something that I dreamed of many years ago. And I'm just so blessed that I've seen it come into fruition, and it's happening, and it's an amazing. I've met more amazing people, and they're doing more amazing things, and I can't imagine what that organization is going to do once it really gets up and running. But it's just the people. It's just what the passion that they have, and the selflessness that they give, so that other people can experience the recovery lifestyle that they've been able to find. That's why I stay in it. So
yeah, when the idea of the National Treatment Court Alumni Program came up, I jumped on it because the veterans need to have a representative, and I'm not saying that I might be the best representative, but I'm the best we got right now, and so I wanted, to fill that gap and fill that doorway until we have more veterans come along. And there's just, like you said, there's an amazing group of people that is currently on that board and in that program. That is just, it adds to my recovery, and I'm forever grateful for being a part of that, and even having the opportunity and being considered, because I got a call from Ron Wilson, another great man. And he's like, "Hey man, we're starting up this National Treatment Court Alumni." And I was like, "Say no more. I'm there. I'm for it." But yeah, definitely. And before we go, what for anybody that's going through addiction, going through a mental health crisis, or many mental health crisis, or thinking about getting into recovery, or contemplating any form of a treatment court, what suggestion or advice do you have for them?
Well, just before I jump into that, I just want to say that I need to share with our viewers, listeners, whatever, that when I say we, AKTCA, struggle to really make a good connection with the vet court, and to have a really good representative in the vet court. And I just want to thank you for what you've done for those that are in the vet court, and creating a peer connection and a connection with the alumni. You've done amazing work. I know that our process group struggled until you came along, and now it's just flourishing, and I just want to thank you for that. And so I think you are the right person to fill the gap, for sure. For anybody that's contemplating recovery, please do it. For anybody that thinks that it's not possible, it is. For anybody that doesn't believe that there's hope and that there's a way out of that lifestyle, there is. And there's so many resources out there now that weren't there when I got involved. There's so many more people that are willing to help you. There's, so many more programs. If people don't know what wellness court is, if you have an alcohol or drug related offense in any way, shape, or form, like my charge was a theft in the second, but I was stealing to support my drug habit. So when the court found that out, I was eligible for drug court. It's difficult when you're in that place to believe that anything can possibly help, but there's so many people that can show you that there's hope and that it works. And there's 12-step programs and there's non-12-step programs. There's programs that involve faith and there's programs that don't involve faith. And there's programs to meet just about every need. And there's one that can help you get sober And if it's not the one that's absolutely perfect for you, it'll get you sober long enough so that you can create it. And there's people out there that if you need it, there's other people that need it, and they'll help you create it. Just give it a chance. Reach out. And if you're not successful the first time, keep trying. Like I said, I did treatment 5 times. And that was how many times I needed to do it. Some people, they get it the first time. Some people, they don't get it until the 20th time. I think the most treatment episodes I've heard of so far is 27.
Wow.
But and the average actually is 8. The national average for people to end up achieving 5 years of continuous sobriety is 8 treatment episodes. So it doesn't mean that treatment doesn't work. It just means that it's a step process. It's an accumulation process. It's something that, it's like riding a bike. You're going to fall down a few times and skin your knees a few times before you become good at it. You have to learn how to do it. It's not something that's just going to happen to you. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You've got to put the work in. You've got to look at yourself, and you've got to find out what changes you need to make, and you need to do whatever you need to do to make those changes. You need to be as motivated to make the changes as you were to get high. You have to be just as invested in making those changes as you were. If I'm so grateful I didn't have to do the horrible, shameful things that I used to do to get high, to get sober, but I was willing at that point. I would do anything, right? I think my first sponsor said, if I tell you to dress up in a pink tutu and go dance on the highway, you better go do it. And so I just got to a point where, okay, I'll do it, and
I'll go buy the tutu right now.
Exactly. Whatever I got to do, I'll go do it. Because so many of us don't make it back. There is hope. There are people that will care about you and that will carry you through until you can care about yourself, and love you until you can love yourself. Just give it a chance. And if you fall, give it another chance. As long as there's life, there's hope. I know that a lot of people like myself was in a position where nobody would even take my phone calls anymore. If I showed up to their house, they would slam the door in my face. And so I had to find people who had been there and knew what it was like, that were still willing to open a door for me and say, okay, I'll show you how I did it. So that's all I got to say, is that whatever it takes, if it takes an AA meeting or if it takes a judge that'll eat a hot dog with you, do it,
Yeah.
And 13 months might seem a long time. 18 months might seem a long time. Shoot, there's even wellness court programs out there that are 24 months, whatever. How many years have been using? How many years have you invested in killing your life and destroying your life? It's just a drop in the bucket. At least it was for me. 13 months was a drop. Shoot, I've had blackouts that lasted longer than that. And I'm not kidding. There was a whole year that I spent in pretty much a blackout. So, I spent years and years trying to destroy my life. The investment of 1 year in trying to save it was a small price to pay.
Absolutely.
But it was and will be the hardest thing that I've ever done. And it was worth it. And it'll be the hardest thing that you've ever done, but it'll be worth it. Yeah.
I was about to say that, been to Afghanistan 4 times, and being in recovery is the hardest thing that I've ever done. Just single-handedly, because I had to focus on myself and not anybody else. And when you take the focus out here and you bring it in here, something about that makes it hard, and that it's the work that you put into it. And, it was absolutely worth it. You said something earlier that, that really struck me. And I say this a lot. When I was drinking, like, I have people say, oh, I miss the old Sean. And I was like, oh, you missed the old Sean, the one that was the worst human being possible. Yeah. Like, you miss that, like the one that you perceived as fun. I don't. And that Sean is buried. That Sean has a headstone. That Sean's never coming back ever again, because that is a version of Sean that I don't want to see, and I don't want anybody else to see.
Amen to that.
And I deserve, I deserve a better life, and I deserve to be happy and healthy, and I deserve, good things in life. And I can't have those if I'm out there in my active addiction.
Exactly. And I put a lot of work. I created that previous Michael, and I created this Michael. I had help to create that previous Michael. There was a lot of people that would help me in my addiction and supported me in my addiction. The other thing that I like to say is that, we did not create that using lifestyle in isolation, and will not create a recovery lifestyle in isolation. We had a support network to support our addictive lifestyle. We need a support network to support our healthy recovery lifestyle. It's something that only we can do, but we can't do on our own.
Absolutely. 100%. I couldn't agree more. Support is huge. And that was one of the things I was lacking when I first started getting into my, when I would get sober, is that support. I'd go out and tell people, oh, I'm sober, but I wasn't really sober. Just was not drinking. I was just abstinent. I wasn't working a program. I wasn't in any form of counseling. My mindset hadn't changed at all. I had zero support, and I made it so. I said I don't want the help because I can do it on my own. Well, on my own led me here.
Yeah.
Led me in jail, and so I really had to take that as a reflection and look and say, I can't do this on my own. And if I attempt to do this on my own, I'm going to end back up right here where I'm at.
Absolutely. Yeah. Left to my own devices, I would always end up in that same place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, I would like to thank you for sitting and hanging out with me for this hour and 15 minutes. Any words that you have are always wisdom and always a pleasure to my ears.
Well, I thank you so very much. I'm honored that you would have me. And my only hope is that in some way, shape, or form, it can be a benefit to others. And I know that I've listened to some of your other podcasts, and I know that it's going to have a very positive impact. And so I had to be a part of it. And so I'm really thankful that you allowed me to be a part of it. And I always enjoy hanging out with you, man. And you're one of those amazing people that is a part and a support in my recovery. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. And we're just looking to change the world one person at a time.
Yeah, starting with me first.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you for hanging out for this hour and 15 minutes with me and Michael Mooridian. And I hope that you guys have a blessed day. And I hope that these words resonate with you. And if you are struggling and you do need some help, please reach out to anybody, even if it's commenting on this video, whether it's finding me on my Facebook or going out and speaking to a counselor or a peer recovery coach. Somebody's always willing to help. And so that help is available, but the first step is you actually saying I need the help. So once again, Mike, thank you for hanging out, and hope all you guys have a great, blessed day. You are worthy, you are worth it, and you are loved, and you are wanted. Have a nice day. Sean out.